I think we can easily make the point that how expensive mistakes are
Yeah.
at whatever level and how valuable it is to resolve them. But I'd like to talk to Jacob a little bit. It sounds like, or at least maybe this is just in my head, but it sounds like checklists are a huge part of this. So it's not memory. They kind of summarize your systems and processes. How does somebody? What is a good-looking checklist? I will say a checklist is not detailed instructions of how to build this job, right? That would be different for every job, contractor or manufacturer.
And that would
But
be more of an
what
SOP.
right, but even at that level, it's what Toyota does is they want everything visible, so you can look over there and see that thing, there's a gap in the line or whatever. That's kind of a visual checklist. But what does a good looking checklist look like? And how do our listeners get started today to start? You already touched on it, you just think through your process, but to literally write good checklists. Once you've got a checklist, you can improve it. When you don't have a checklist, it's just something you're thinking about.
Yeah. No, and I think Khalil brought up a good point because your checklist and your QC process is separate from your SOP, and it needs to, but it should verify that if your SOP was followed, that the product is good, right? And so, what am I? And I'll just talk specifically about how I advise my clients. A lot of times I'm working specifically in manufacturing with the design and engineering team, and their job in millwork manufacturing is to basically pre-engineer the plan for how manufacturing is going to execute. And they literally will program the machines to cut parts and have drawings and detailed information. And so from that, it's how do we make sure that output once it hits production, goes smoothly through their process. And so the first thing I usually find is that there's this expectation that if I have a good engineer and I have a good person, they should just be able to do their work and nobody should have to check their work, and it just is right. There's this assumption that hey, if we have people that are trained well and we have SOPs and they're doing their job right, their output is just always going to be right. And in the trades, and really in anything, but definitely in the trades, everything we do, every job is unique. Everything we do is unique. And so it's not even though we're not making airplanes and we're not making a high mass manufactured thing, there's still common things that we can define to check. And so getting back to your specific question, it's what are the mistakes that are commonly happening, and literally check for those things. So I alluded to this earlier, verifying what is the countertop thickness. And I'll just talk about cabinetry for a second. It's the work is done, but before it goes to the client, or the engineering is done before it goes to the internal client, which is manufacturing, having a checklist, and I start this as a physical piece of paper, or you can do it PDF if you've gone digital, but having a physical document that I'm file save as, this is my checklist for this job or this work order, this thing that I'm reviewing. I'm going to put my name on it. I'm going to put my date. I'm going to put specific information about what I'm checking. And I'm going to go through and literally check off. I verified that the countertops, I know their thickness. I've got the approval from the client. I've got the finish sample, and that's verified. This product that I'm looking at matches that. And how this is implemented can be automated in a lot of ways, but I suggest starting simple. And then from that, you will refine that process. So another example is in manufacturing, you'll have product labels that get printed on the floor, and it might have a summary of information that says this cabinet should look like this, a little picture from the engineering drawing. And it can have some information that's hey, this should have a finished end on it. So the side of it should be this material. The height should be this, the width. That is a checklist. That's a form of a checklist that somebody, though, should be looking at and saying, this is what I was supposed to make, and I'm looking at the product in front of me, and I'm verifying that it's all correct. And so this is the part that I think people get lost on, is because they think, oh, well, The process should automate the output, and then I don't have to check things. But if you don't check things, you're just opening yourself up for those mistakes to get through. Mistakes happen. Gaps in process happen. People skip steps. And so that's what the checklist is for. And you're literally saying, hey, I'm going to take 30 seconds, 5 minutes, whatever it is, to save myself the cost and labor and time of having to fix that mistake. So start with a piece of paper, save it in Word, and you'll refine that over time, but start simple. And I think people also get lost on like, okay, I don't want to implement QC until I have QC for everything. Start with what your pain point is today. Like, I'm thinking about this, I'm listening to this episode, and I'm thinking, man, I wish I could have avoided this mistake on that last job. Make a checklist that would have prevented that mistake and build from there.
Does this have to be such like a complicated process, or is this, I mean, it sounds like it's one of those things that you should almost constantly be aware of and adding to and have as a living, breathing process inside of your business as an owner. And, if you, once you have a rhythm of this, how long should it take you to create a checklist in general?
I mean, it can take 5 minutes. It could take a 15-minute meeting with your team, and that's really what it is when you start talking, like as an owner, what are the things that you're aware of? Start there. But if you just go start asking your team, start literally from the shipping dock, or start, if you're a contractor, start from your site superintendent and work upstream and say, hey, what are the things that constantly cause you issues? And ask them about, starting downstream, because most people are very hyper aware of like, well, I keep getting these reports from purchasing, or I keep getting shipments and they're wrong. They're going to tell you the mistakes of the people upstream from them because it causes them pain. But a lot of people overlook their own mistakes. So you're going to find the best thing by going downstream. Your customers will tell you, hey, I didn't like this mistake, but then you have internal customers in your organization. So you got to go through your organization to find, hey, what pain points, what things are you constantly fixing for somebody upstream from you? And the other thing to think about with this is because a lot of people get hung up on this. And if you go to individual employees, they're going to be like, well, this person constantly gives me their mistakes. They need to fix that. Coach your people as well. As like, look, your job, part of your job description is to catch mistakes from everybody upstream. So don't be frustrated when you're finding mistakes. Be proud. And I'm grateful that you're finding these mistakes and fixing them. But you have to constantly be, part of quality control is documenting those things and then reviewing, hey, we've had a lot of these mistakes. How do we refine our process to fix that? So quality control isn't just preventing mistakes. It's refining your process to prevent future mistakes and constantly reduce your mistakes.